There's other situations that it been dice games. Like Tony Yayo was at a dice game. He was rolling dice with somebody. Shit went left. He got smacked. Guns came out. It was a Wild Wild West situation, you know?
Tony Yayo, one of the most recognizable names out of South Jamaica, Queens. And somebody just went on camera and said this man got smacked at a dice game. Not just smacked, guns came out. It turned into a full Wild West situation in the middle of New York City. And here's what makes it hit different. The person who said it grew up with Tony Yayo. He was there. This ain't some random internet claim. But before we get into that, you need to understand who Tony Yayo really is and where he came from, because the story hits way harder when you know the streets that built him. Tony Yayo, real name Marvin Bernard, born March 31st, 1978 in South Jamaica, Queens. And when I say South Jamaica in the late 80s and early 90s, I need y'all to really feel that. One of the toughest pockets in all of New York. Poverty everywhere. Drug trade right outside your door. Violence was just something you saw before you even understood what it was. Yayo's parents were Haitian immigrants. His mother worked her way up from nurse's aide to registered nurse, holding the family together. Home was solid, but the block don't care about what's happening inside your house. Here's where it gets deep. Yayo's father used to tell him, "Stay off the boulevard." That warning stayed with him. He laughed about it later, saying that same warning made him want to go more. And the same boulevard his father warned him about? That's the exact boulevard. He got arrested on years later. The streets were that powerful. By his mid-teens, South Jamaica had fully claimed him. At just 15, Marvin Bernard dropped out in 10th grade and hit the block, dealing drugs to help support his family. A year later, his parents split. Father gone now, a 16-year-old kid raising himself in the streets. But this is also where destiny stepped in, because on those same corners, young Marvin crossed paths with two kids who would change everything. One went by Boo Boo. The world would come to know him as 50 Cent. And the other was Christopher Lloyd. The world would know him as Lloyd Banks. Lloyd Banks. These three became inseparable, running together, hustling together, surviving together in a neighborhood that swallowed people whole. And Yayo has talked about how 50 Cent was already operating. On a different level back then, reportedly had 20 of his own people working for him as a young man. Not a regular dude. Yayo was right there with him, learning, watching, coming up. Now here's something that connects directly to today's story. Dice games were just part of everyday life in South Jamaica. Not exotic, not special. It was Tuesday. Corners, barbershops, parks, that was the culture Yayo grew up in. Keep that in mind. By the late 90s and early 2000s, Tony Yayo, 50 Cent, and Lloyd Banks had formed G-Unit, grinding the mixtape circuit block by block, borough by borough, building a name the old-fashioned way. Then 50 Cent did the impossible, signed a massive deal with Aftermath and Shady Records in 2002, co-signed by Dr. Dre and Eminem. The biggest deal in hip-hop at that moment. G-Unit was about to go global. This was their moment. And where was Tony Yayo? Jail. On December 31st, 2002, New Year's Eve, Yayo was arrested on weapons possession charges. But it got worse. A background check revealed an outstanding warrant from a previous weapons charge. Now it was bail jumping on top of everything. He got sentenced in early 2003 and stayed locked up into 2004. Think about that timeline. 50 Cent drops Get Rich or Die, trying 800,000 copies in 4 days. G-Unit's Beg for Mercy goes platinum. The crew is selling out arenas, on every screen, every station. And Tony Yayo is watching all of it from inside a cell. The moment he worked. His whole life forgone. But this is where loyalty showed up for real. 50 Cent wore free Yayo t-shirts everywhere, pushed his name in every interview, made sure the world knew Yayo was essential to G-Unit even while he was locked up. People who'd never heard a single Yayo song knew his name because of those shirts. That campaign became one of the most organic rap marketing moments of the early 2000s. That's rare. Genuinely rare. When Yayo finally got out, the machine was waiting. He dropped his debut album, Thoughts of a Predicate Felon, in August 2005, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. Off the strength of the G-Unit machine, the loyalty of his crew, and streets that never forgot his name. But here's what makes today's story so interesting. Even through all that success, the block never fully left Tony Yayo. He said it himself. Being a rapper means you never really have your peace. The temptations are always there: women, money, gambling, the whole culture pulling at you. And that word gambling, that's exactly where this story connects. Before we get to what Domination said, you need context, because this isn't some random accusation out of nowhere. There's history here. Back in January 2023, after Takeoff tragically passed away at a dice game in Houston, Tony Yayo sat down and talked about his own personal dice game history. What he described was wild. Yayo told the story of a dice game inside a New York City barber shop. He and his boys were cleaning a dude out completely, taking everything including what Yayo called his rent money. When it was over, the guy asked for a walk, meaning a portion, of his money back just so he won't go home completely broke. Yayo refused, and when he refused, it went left. Gunfire. Inside a barber shop in New York City. Yayo was right there in the middle of it, and he described it, I kid you not, as a friendly shootout, only in New York. So understand, dice games turning into chaos is not foreign territory for Tony Yayo. That situation, guns came out on the other side. Today's story that Domination told, completely different, and it hits way harder. Now let me tell you who Domination is before we get into what he said, because context matters. Domination, real name Donald Coleman, is a rapper who ran in G-Unit circles back in the day, most known for his connection with Bangoom Smurf, a former G-Unit affiliate. This is not some stranger making claims. This is someone embedded in that world, same circles, same streets, same people. What Domination told Cam Capone News on May 23, 2025 was explosive. But before he even got to the dice game, he said something else first that set the entire tone. Pay close attention to this part.
Now, at some point, you meet Tony Yayo? You know Tony Yayo since you were a kid?
I know Tony Yayo since I was a kid, yeah. He was signed to not signed, because they wasn't signed, but they was in an underground group called Rags to Riches. It was him, Fat Shy, a.k.a. DJ Rough Hands, God bless the dead, and my man Katif, God bless the dead. They call him Huey P.
When the interview kicked off, Domination made one thing crystal clear. He's known Tony Yayo since they were kids. They met on the block. Same streets, same environment we've been talking about this whole time. These aren't strangers. But here's where it gets wild. The host referred to Yayo as Dom's big homie, someone he looked up to, above him in the street. Hierarchy. Domination shut that down immediately. Said he never looked up to Yayo in his life, that he wasn't much to look up to, that he was just an ordinary hustler on the block. Y'all, that's a loud statement. This is coming from someone who was actually there, who saw Tony Yayo in his element before the fame, before the G-Unit deal, before the platinum plaques. He's saying that before all of that, Yayo wasn't some untouchable, feared figure. He was just another dude, nothing more, nothing less. And that one statement sets up everything that comes next perfectly, because if Domination already saw Yayo as ordinary, not feared, not commanding, then what he says about the dice game lands completely different. About 13 minutes into the interview, Domination shifted gears, and what came out next was not a minor story. This was not a small altercation. This was a full-blown street situation. And y'all, this is the part you've been waiting for.
Tony Yayo was at a dice game. He was rolling dice with somebody. Shit went left. He got smacked. Guns came out. It was a Wild Wild West situation, you know?
Domination said Tony Yayo was at a dice game, rolling with somebody. Normal Tuesday in South Jamaica. Queens, we already established that. But then it went left. And when it went left, Tony Yayo got smacked. Let that sink in. A member of G-Unit, one of the most feared and respected crews in hip-hop history, got smacked at a dice game. But wait, it didn't stop there. After Yayo got smacked, guns came out. Domination described it as a full Wild West situation, multiple people pulling out over a dice dispute that spiraled completely out of control. This wasn't a planned confrontation. This wasn't a beef building over time. This was a dice game. The same kind of situation Tony Yayo himself said he was around constantly growing up, and it exploded. And the person telling this story wasn't some random internet commenter. This was someone from the same block, same world, literally present in those streets. Now, some people online have pushed back, said Domination is reaching, just chasing attention, that the reaction wasn't disbelief, it was, this tracks. This felt consistent with what people already knew or suspected about that era in those streets. So let me address the elephant in the room. Has Tony Yayo responded? Has he said anything about what Domination put on camera? As of right now, nothing. No social media response, no interview clapback, complete silence. And that silence speaks volumes. Two ways to read it. Option 1. Yayo doesn't feel it's worth responding to. In the world of street credibility, responding to every claim gives it oxygen. It validates it. It tells the internet, this touched me enough to react. Sometimes silence is the power move. Option 2. And this is the one most people are sitting with. Maybe the silence isn't because the story is false. Maybe it's because responding means going on record about something he'd rather leave buried in the past. And here's why that matters. Tony Yayo has never pretended he came from a peaceful environment. He's talked openly about dice games going wrong, gunfire, chaos. We just covered the barbershop story. So if what Domination described actually happened, it wouldn't be out of place in the world Yayo has described living in. What it would be is embarrassing. Because the image 50 Cent built, that G-Unit built, was built entirely on strength, on the idea that you could not move on these men without serious consequences. That was the whole brand. So a story about one of the members getting smacked at a dice game even before the fame, even when they were just kids on the block, that chips away at something. The story exists now. It's been said on camera, on a platform that gets millions of views. And Tony Yayo himself has been open about exactly why that stings. He's talked about how being a rapper means constantly performing a version of yourself, always managing perception, never really having your peace. So maybe this Domination story hits harder, not just because of the incident itself, but because of what it represents. Someone from his own world, someone who knew him before the fame, going on camera and saying he was never feared, never commanding, just an ordinary dude on the block. That's the real story underneath the story. This isn't just about a smack at a dice game. This is about the gap between image and reality, and that gap runs deep in hip-hop culture. Tony Yayo built his career alongside 50 Cent and Lloyd Banks on a foundation of authenticity. G-Unit's entire appeal was that these were real men from real streets. 50 Cent got shot 9 times and survived. Got dropped by a label and still clawed his way to the top. That authenticity was the engine that powered all of them, and Yayo was part of that. The Free Yayo campaign worked because people genuinely believed he was a real one doing real time while his crew blew up without him. That narrative had weight. But the actual streets, not the romanticized version, don't care about platinum plaques or image management. On the block, what matters is what's happening right now, in real time, in front of people who actually know you. And Domination's story, true or not, is a reminder that the block has its own memory, its own receipts. The way Domination talked about Yayo wasn't the way you talk about someone you feared or respected above yourself. It was the way you talk about someone you grew up around but never put on a pedestal. Just an ordinary hustler, not a king. Just another dude doing what everybody was doing. Let me be clear about something. Being an ordinary hustler on the block is not a disrespect on its own. Most people who grew up in South Jamaica, Queens in the 80s and 90s were just trying to survive. Being ordinary in that environment just means you were human. The problem is when the image you project publicly is dramatically different from that reality. That's when stories like Domination's land hard. Not because being ordinary is shameful, but because that contrast between image and reality is exactly what the internet feasts on. And this tension between who you were, who you are, and who your brand says you are never fully goes away. There will always be someone who was there, who remembers. In the age of platforms like Cam Capone News, built specifically to pull these stories out, the chances of them staying buried are basically zero. That's the world Tony Yayo is living in right now. And that's the world Domination just dropped a bomb into. But let's give the full picture because this isn't about dragging the man. Tony Yayo is still active, still in the culture. He co-hosts the Real Report podcast alongside Uncle Murda, staying honest and entertaining, giving his perspective as someone with over 2 decades in the game. He recently announced the G-Unit Reebok sneakers are making a comeback money and movement still happening around the G-Unit brand. And that's actually what makes Tony Yayo's legacy interesting. Despite the comparisons to Lloyd Banks and 50 Cent in terms of rap skill, the legal situations, the controversies, the man is still here. Still relevant enough that one story on Cam Capone News sends the internet into a frenzy. Still important. Enough that Domination thought his name alone was worth dropping to create a moment. That's something. Love him or hate him, Tony Yayo still moves the needle. Here's my honest read. The dice game story from Domination is out there now. Major outlets covered it. It's all over YouTube. It's everywhere. Whether Yayo responds is still an open question, but if he does, that response matters more than the story itself. The way you handle being put on blast tells everything about your character. He can deny it, easy move. He can say it never happened. Maybe true, maybe not. Or he can do the most powerful thing possible, own it. Say, yeah, dice games go sideways. I've been in situations. This is what the streets look like. That kind of raw, unflinching honesty would hit harder than any denial. Because everything about Tony Yayo's career has proven that the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, resonates deeper than a carefully managed image. And that right there is the full story. From Marvin Bernard dropping out at 15 on the streets of South Jamaica, Queens to running with 50 Cent and Lloyd Banks, building G-Unit from nothing to sitting in a cell while his crew went platinum without him to becoming a certified part of hip-hop history. And now, decades later, having a former associate go on camera and drop a story that's got the entire internet talking. That's the life of Tony Yayo in 2025. And it is never boring. Now I need to hear from y'all. Do you think Tony Yayo responds to this? Is Domination telling the truth? Or is this just someone chasing their 15 minutes off a bigger name? Drop it in the comments right now. I'm actually reading every single one. And listen, if this video gave you a different look at the G-Unit story and what those streets really looked like before the cameras and the platinum, hit that like button and subscribe. We go this deep on every video. The next one hits just as hard. I'll catch y'all there.